Spring 2008 on TSN is brought to you by the new Q horsepower from Quaker State. Unleash all your horses. And Michelin, a better way forward.
The Detroit Auto Show is considered by many to be the most significant of all auto shows held around the world each year. I mean, anybody who is anyone is there. And let's not forget that for many years, the Motor City was home to the Big Three, and it was the heart of the automotive industry. Well, of course, things have changed. And now Ford, Chrysler, and GM are building cars around the world. And speaking of GM, its problems have been well documented, but many believe this company is now moving in the right direction thanks to good product. Well, this week we're out in beautiful New Brunswick to check out the brand new Pontiac G8. It's the first GM vehicle sold in this country that has been built, designed, and engineered in Australia. And as we're about to see, GM is hoping the new G8 is going to put the grunt back into Pontiac.
This is a return to the performance game for Pontiac. This is a true rear-wheel drive performance machine, and it's a car we've been looking for a long time for Pontiac. It's got outstanding performance, great design, but surprisingly good fuel economy. So, it's the top of the line for Pontiac. We do expect it to play a niche role, but it is going to be the halo vehicle in terms of performance for Pontiac. It's built and designed in Australia, and of course GM's a global company, and as we know these days, we're able to reach around the world and bring the very best products to market. So we worked with our folks at Holden, and they're the ones with the design capability on the rear-wheel drive system, and we're able to bring that product to Canada and put it out there in the market. And I should mention that the product it offers in Australia, the Holden Commodore, has been one of the best-selling vehicles down there for many years, won a number of prizes, and we think it's going to do quite well here in North America.
The 6-cylinder engine is from Australia. The 8-cylinder is sourced in Mexico. The 5-speed transmission in Strasbourg. The 6-speed transmission in the United States. Not a lot of Canadian content, but that doesn't say that in future cars there won't be. I mean, this really is a global GM car, and it works pretty well.
We didn't even consider front wheel. Rear-wheel drive was the only way we wanted to go here. The standard equipment, traction control, ABS brakes, StabiliTrak, we've considered everything. Safety, 6 airbags. It really is a well-equipped car for the price you're going to pay. 2 powertrains, 3.6-liter double overhead cam V6 in the base car, and the 6-liter V8 in the GT model. The 6-liter has been around for a while. It's used in a number of General Motors products, a number of them being trucks. It's all aluminum. It has active fuel management, which is the cylinder deactivation. So fuel economy is further enhanced in the positive direction by deactivating half the cylinders in a number of driving conditions. So you get performance, 361 horsepower, as well as great fuel economy, both in the city and in the highway.
The direct competitors for this car would be the Nissan Maxima, they're just launching a new product, and the Dodge Charger. We're targeting this vehicle at performance enthusiasts. We think it's right for folks who are 35 to 55 years old, probably more male buyers. These are people who want a performance vehicle but also want to balance off some family responsibilities. There's lots of room in the back seat for family members, but this is a performance car, and we think it's going to appeal to folks who want passionate driving experience.
The G8 is certainly a step in the right direction. I don't know that you can quite call this the American BMW just yet, although there's some clear styling cues there, and not to mention the twin kidney grille and the little kickback on the rear roof pillar. But this is a car that has serious performance credentials. It's obviously got decent power in both the V6 and the V8 versions. It's got a nice firm ride. It's got a decent handling to the car. And rear-wheel drive, which unfortunately in some people's minds is simply a ne plus ultra in terms of performance cars.
You know, there's a lot to like about this new G8. I love the design, but I've got good and bad news when it comes to the rear of the vehicle. One of my biggest pet peeves is that all indicator lights should be yellow, not red. Well, GM has done it right. It's a yellow indicator light, and red is strictly for stop. But the bad news concerns the trunk. Now, you can open it when you've got the key fob in your hand, but if it's in the car, there's no latch to open it manually. You've got to go in the glove compartment to open up the trunk. Now, once you open up the trunk, there's lots of room inside, but it's that old question. If they can put a man on the moon, why can't they put a latch on the trunk?
It's good. I'm not completely overwhelmed by it, but it's a very good car. The price is right. I think it's just over $30,000 for the base model. I think that's a good value. When you look at various imported cars that have similar sorts of performance credentials, this car completely blows them away on price.
The 6-cylinder is okay. The 8-cylinder is stupendous. It really is. Whether it's the right time for an 8-cylinder car is another matter. People who want that kind of car will always buy it.
General Motors' divisional philosophy has always been that each division is supposed to represent something different for the consumer. And in the last 10-15 years, I think about the only completely unique product that Pontiac has had is the Vibe. And this is the first car in a long time that has a Pontiac badge that you can't buy with any other badge anywhere else in North America.
At best, this is a niche car. The fortunes of the company aren't going to rise and fall on the Pontiac G8. This is a pretty good performing car. It's quick. I mean, it's under 6 seconds well under 6 seconds from 0 to 100 with the 8. And it might just be the halo car that Pontiac has been looking for and hasn't been able to find for a long, long time.
Finally, small is the new big. More later on Kenzie's Corner.
The rest of the world has been having far too much fun for far too long. The good news, it's now Canada's turn. This week on Test Drive, the all-new Evo. After being denied the Evo for so long, the anticipation and longing for the 10th generation car was, well, intense. The wait, however, has been well worth the while. Its good looks and obvious breeding are only eclipsed by the manner in which it drives. Keeping the smile off an Evo owner's face is going to be darn near impossible, which speaks volumes about the potential. This Evo is every inch a driver's car. To begin with, a great stereo that keeps you entertained when you go out for a quick thrash. Then you get to these Recaro seats. Now these things are as good as anything you'll find in any car at any price. There are, however, a couple of pet peeves. First of all, only tilt steering. It needs a telescopic adjustment as well. And buried way down here in the cluster is a tiny fuel gauge. It's easy to miss the point that you should be pulling over and gassing up. Part of the Evo's fascination boils down to what's under the hood. The 2-litre turbocharged engine is, in a word, a blinder. Along with its 291 horsepower comes a very willing 300 pound-feet of torque that shows up for work at 4,000 RPM. The fact that turbo lag is virtually non-existent means it catches fire the moment the driver drops the hammer. To begin with, it runs to 100k in just 5.4 seconds. That, however, is only the start. Jam the gas at 80 and the speedo flashes through 120 kilometers an hour in a world-class 4.1 seconds. Keep the hammer down and you can kiss your license goodbye. One of the Evo's defining features is its all-wheel drive system. Not only does it split the power front to rear, it also divvies up the power at the rear in a different manner. When you go flogging into a left-hand corner, it actually turns the right rear wheel faster than it does this wheel. That action actually turns the car into the corner. Now that does a number of good things. First of all, less need for steering input, which reduces the likelihood of understeer. But more importantly, the all-wheel drive system is actually used as the first level of electronic stability control. That means that the true electronic nannies, well, they actually don't turn up for work until they're actually needed. Along with the other party tricks, the driver can also control the power split front to rear. There are tarmac, gravel and snow modes, each of which changes the manner in which the grunt reaches the road and the manner in which the Evo handles. It's a superb system that is only rivaled by BMW's xDrive with DPC and the latest Haldex system employed by Saab. The 5-speed manual box is perhaps the only weak link. The ratios are great when thrashing around, but the car feels just too busy on the highway. The MR and its twin-clutch 6-speed box solves this problem. This Evo is all about handling and balance. Now, the handling side, you'll find an awful lot of aluminum in everything from the suspension components to the hood. As for the balance, well, you'll find some of that right here. There's the battery, there's the washer fluid bottle. Now, by moving those components from the front of the car to the back, it evens out the weight distribution front to rear. The downside, what you see in terms of trunk capacity is what you get. All of that trimming and balancing works wonders. The Evo waltzed through the pylons like a past master. There is very little understeer. The P205 40R18 tyres bring tons of lateral grip, and the response to steering input is lightning fast. The bonus with the 10th generation car is that unlike the previous model, this one also brings some civility to its drive. There's enough give to the suspension you don't need an extensive dental plan, and the steering speed does not translate into a darty feel. It is a dynamic delight. The uber-powerful Brembo brakes follow this lead, bringing short 39-metre stops from 100k. This Evo is an awesome piece of engineering. Yes, it has its flaws. It needs a 6-speed gearbox instead of the 5-speed, although the MR will take care of that. It's got fantastic brakes, great handling, power to beat the band, and an all-wheel drive system that is world-class. In fact, only Saab and BMW offer anything with anywhere near the same sort of sophistication. This thing was well worth the wait.
Time to update our long-term Saturn Astra, which was our overall car of the year for 2008. The first thing to strike you is the styling. Very European. Not surprising when you consider this really is the Opel Astra, which has been a big seller in Europe for the past 4 years. Our test vehicle is the 5-door XR model. Only one engine available, but it's the reliable 1.8 4-cylinder with 138 horses, and it's tied to our optional 4-speed automatic. The 5-speed manual is standard. Sure, not head-jerking power, but certainly enough, and driven in a fuel-efficient manner, it passes lots of gas stations. Well, you know, since we picked this car as our overall car of the year, we obviously like the Astra, but I do have a pet peeve. General Motors, like other car companies, has a system that when you put the car into drive, all the doors lock. But when you put it into park, instantly they unlock. Not in the Astra. You put it into park, with the exception of the driver's door, they all stayed locked, and you wouldn't believe the whining in the car. Well, I finally dusted off the manual and checked it out, and guess what? They do. They have a button right here, and that unlocks them. Those silly Europeans. Make sure you check out Motoring's brand new website. Miss an episode or segment on TSN? You can now watch it on the web. We also have a Car of the Year poll, photo gallery, the latest news, and much more. And it's all at motoringtv.com. One thing you notice when you're driving the new G8, especially if it's equipped with that hot V8, is that you can very quickly be driving a lot faster than you had planned. And I'm not a big fan of cruise control, so what General Motors has, it's kind of a little speed limit gadget. It's called Overspeed. And what you do is you set the speed you're most comfortable with, and when you surpass that speed, a little chime goes off. Now, I'm not a big fan of bells and chimes going off in the vehicle. The good thing about this one is it only happens once when you surpass that speed. And you know, I'd rather have it remind me than you know who with a big fat speeding ticket. All right, let's head to the Quaker State Garage and join Bill Gardner.
Brad, we're under the hood of the 2008 GMC Canyon compact-sized pickup truck, Interesting thing, the last few model years, General Motors, the pioneer and longtime user of the side terminal or side post battery, has now pretty much gone back to top terminal batteries. Certainly for mechanics, a lot easier to deal with. Originally, they went to side post batteries to drop the hood height down. These top post batteries, though, are much easier to deal with in the field. Now, interesting feature here, and nothing new about this either, but this 1.5-inch rubber hose that you see that leads to just ahead of the radiator and back here to the battery thermal guard. What does that do? Well, it brings cool air from just ahead of the radiator back and completely circulates it through this two-piece battery thermal guard. There's a lower section and an upper section that clip together, almost looks like a takeout food box, and it completely enshrouds the battery. Now, what that thermal guard does is it provides a heat dam between the tremendous heat generated by the engine and all the underhood components, and brings this cool air from ahead of the radiator, circulates it through there to keep that battery cool. And that is going to add a lot of life and performance to our battery. Now, if you're changing the battery in your vehicle, regardless of what vehicle it is, many vehicles, even going back as late as the 70s and 80s, had thermal guards or some kind of a heat dam between the battery and the engine bay. If you see that installed on your car, when you're replacing the battery, don't discard it. Try and refit it with the replacement battery. And in some cases, if you buy the wrong battery, either wrong part number or physically too big, you can't get that cover back on. So it's important, the engineers designed that vehicle for it to be there. If at all possible, get it back on there when you're replacing the battery. Another interesting thing, last 10 or 15 model years, we find that we're replacing batteries more frequently in the summertime than we do in the winter. And that is also as a result of the tremendous heat generated by the powertrain of your vehicle, actually just shortening the life of your battery. We find that 2 or 3 days into or after the hottest part of the summer, that's when we replace most of the batteries. When you're replacing your battery, anything you can do to upgrade in terms of performance or price usually buys you a lot more performance and a lot more longevity and better cranking in cold temperatures, so that money is well spent. Make sure you reinstall that thermal guard, and if you have plumbing like this bringing cool air from ahead of the radiator, make sure it goes back on too. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 2008.
It's said that many young people spend too much time on the couch or in front of the computer screen. Well, not this crowd. It was a 10th annual J-Body Club Show and Shine, and it was evident that the long love affair between youth and their automobiles is still alive.
It was started 10 years ago, very small. Started out with about 8 or 10 guys. They all had older generation Cavalier Sunfire, the J-Body platform. Began to meet and thought, this is good. Let's continue to get together. And then it really grew from there. The word got out. The Cavalier's a great car, economical. There's plenty of them on the road, starting in '83, right on through until 2004. So there's plenty of them out there. The acronym JCO is J-Body Club of Ontario. The J stands for the platform that those vehicles are built on, and that includes most well-known, the Cavalier, the Sunfire. We do this once a year annually. We have a great location here at St. Thomas Dragway.
General Motors even took advantage of this gathering of GM enthusiasts to unveil its new 2009 Pontiac Solstice.
I was very excited to hear that they were going to reveal the Solstice. I almost didn't want to say because I haven't told anybody about it, just so it was a surprise, and everyone is really surprised to see that they would take the effort to bring a car like that. Like I said, we're modest, it's a small show, so we're honored that they would choose to unveil that car here. A lot of people that aren't familiar with domestics underestimate these vehicles, and they are very surprised sometimes when they see these cars go down the track. Even in stock form, for an economy car, they're quick, but there are some highly modified cars here, and it's fun because there's a lot of grudge matches. People do a little trash talk on the forums, and it all results here today where they meet up, and they'll see who's the best.
Closed captioning of Motoring 2008 is brought to you by the totally new Chevrolet Malibu, 2008 North American Car of the Year.
bunch of years ago, Volkswagen introduced the VR6 edition of the Golf. Big, powerful engine, leather upholstery, whole 9 yards. The point was, anybody in Germany can drive a Volkswagen. It's the people's car. So a bank president could drive a Golf where he couldn't drive an Opel Astra. It's just a status thing. But they still wanted to have their luxury equipment. Well, nowadays, everybody's starting to get into that act. The Mini, for example, when it came out, it was a high-priced small car, and it sold very well. And now, with everybody being more concerned about fuel efficiency, the market's starting to come around to saying, geez, you know, do I really need to drive that great whacking huge SUV when I'm just going to my office? Maybe I can get away with a nice small car. But they don't want to give up anything. They want their leather, they want their sat-nav, they want their high-end stereo system, and so the price of these cars is pretty high. And what does that mean? It means finally small cars can be profitable. And perhaps more important, small cars are now cool. I mean, small is cool in just about everything else. If you got a smaller iPod, you're cooler than the guy next to you. A smaller cell phone, a smaller, more powerful camera, it all works. I just wish small was cool back when I drove my Fiat 600. I'm Jim KENZIE.
You're looking at Minister's Island in New Brunswick. That's right, it is an island. With the exception of 6 hours every day at low tide, it is inaccessible by car. And of course, we're on the Bay of Fundy, the highest tides in the world. As a matter of fact, in just a couple of hours, the water, they tell me, will be about 15 feet above my head. But I know this is a show about cars. What do I think of the G8? Well, first of all, don't go off-roading. That's right, yours truly went off the main road here, got myself stuck, but thanks to good old maritime hospitality and a little muscle, we got the car out. But seriously, the G8, the best way to describe it is the way my nephew would describe it, and that is with the word sweet. It is a beautiful car, hugs the road like it's on rails. It has a V6, it has a V8. Normally I'd recommend the V6 for fuel economy, but heck, this V8 is just too sweet to ignore. And of course you can deactivate cylinders if fuel economy is an issue. Anyway, you know, Pontiac, it is the performance division of General Motors, and Pontiac has had its bumps over the road in the past few years, but GM is confident, and so am I, that this new G8 will become the flagship of Pontiac. Graham will have an even closer look on a future program. That's it for now. We'll see you next time as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
It does express what Infiniti is all about. It really did set a standard for design in Infiniti. And when you go out and push the envelope with a design, you've got to be successful. You've got to have a car that people react to and they go, yeah, that's just right. And that's the case with the FX.
Motoring 2008 on TSN has been brought to you by the new Q horsepower from Quaker State. Unleash all your horses. And Michelin, a better way forward.